So after a few solid days of testing and lamenting all over my enemies, I can confirm Xianyun is pretty fucking broken, and I'm going to be explaining to you why, as well as going over some of her shortcomings. Hello there, Philip here, and today I'm going to be giving my first impressions, well, not really first, you know what I mean, on Xianyun or Cloud Retainer or Bird Mom, and telling you why she's one of the best Genshin characters to pick up currently and can be an upgrade to quite a few of your characters. But before we do that, as always, if at any point during the video you're entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta, and I'll try to keep you updated. Now, one more thing before getting into my absolute glaze fest over the Queen of Lament Xianyun. I do need to address some of her flaws, as no character is perfect and Xianyun is of course no exception. The first thing is that you really want to have Fiorina if you have Xianyun. She isn't unplayable without Fiorina, but all of her best teams involve using her. All healers in Genshin are going to be balanced around Fiorina, so of course the healers are not going to feel as good without her. Another issue this causes though is that Fiorina happens to be one of, if not the strongest unit in the game currently, so having to dedicate a slot to also run Xianyun may not be the best feeling in the world. Nuvola and Fiorina is a godsend pairing, literally, so maybe having to weaken your other teams to then run Xianyun is not something you'd be on board with, but at the very least there aren't that many characters that are so extremely Fiorina dependent. And lastly, Xianyun is only really extremely versatile if you have a C6 Bennett, as that is what enables one of the strongest cores in the game, which I'll touch more on later. So if you're a person without C6 Bennett, or a bitch who wants C6 Bennett even though it doesn't ruin any good teams, then again you may not feel her full power. And the last notable issue is that you have to plunge with her. Some people don't like plungers, I don't know. So let's talk first about the new core that's been opened up. Are you a coping Deo player that is hoping she gets a buff? Or are you a Eula main that's fallen into depravity over physical being shit and pissed on for years? Do you main any polearm, sword, or claymore character that you know isn't that great but you like them anyways? Well, let me introduce you to a new staple core of C6 Bennett, Xianyun, and Fiorina. Because of how strong plungers are, how much Xianyun buffs those plunges, and how much plunges and Xianyun's flat buff gets amplified by vaping, literally every melee character in the game now has access to a batshit strong team. And unlike other cores like Hyperbloom or National, the great thing is that your character is actually doing all the plunge damage, and they're actually being the carry of the team, so it feels a lot better than slapping them with 3 units that are doing all the work. The other great thing about this core is the gearing. Bennett has access to a lot of weapons including Sapwood Blade, which is free to play. Fiorina has access to great weapons in Fav Sword, Fluve, or Festering. Xianyun has Fav and Oathsworn, but if you're really down in the trenches, then any attack percent or ER catalyst should do fine. And now for your carry, they can first off run the Hunter set since they're being run with Fiorina, giving a ton of crit. And there are a lot of good free to play weapons you can use. Sword users get Iron Sting or Finale of the Deep. Polearm users, okay, polearm users are kind of cooked, but if you're lucky you might have a Dragon's Bane lying around. And Claymore characters have the Tidal Shadows for free-to-play options and things like the Rain Slasher. All around a strong and somewhat accessible core that allows some of your favorite cope characters to clear. There are some downsides because vaping and single target can be inconsistent because of the nature of Fiorina's Hydra application, and the fact that Xianyun will swirl off the Hydra aura, but this is solved in AoE as the Hydra auras will swirl into each other, and you can also just wait a second before going into your next plunge, or try to delay your jump as much as possible, which will also net you a high plunge. Now, let's talk about who Xianyun upgrades the most. Starting with the obvious ones I don't need to explain at all, we have Diluc, who can either use Xianyun Bennett Fiorina core, or double Hydra teams. Xiox, whose best team involves using Farza and Fiorina. And the last obvious one is going to be gaming. With C6 Bennett and Xianyun, instead of having to do normals, you can just add a plunge in between your skill plunges, which is very nice. The next character I'm going to talk about is something I've said 100 times, but no one is willing to hear me out on. But Xianyun is very good for Raiden, even without Xianyun buffing Raiden's plunges. Double Hydra Raiden is currently her strongest team, and Jean was there only because she was really the best Anemo healer at the time. And the problem is that Jean offers no real buffing at all, and swirling consistency. And well, the best mom cures both of those issues. Due to having Anemo normal attacks, you can just normal attack to get your Electro Swirl on demand. Additionally, on Raiden teams, Xianyun's energy requirements will be so low that TTDS becomes a viable option on her, and will give Raiden a relevant 48% attack buff. People are still testing out plunge combos that I don't think they'll be that great just because you lose out on Mulan waves. Moving on, Hu-Ta mains who are so obsessed with this character when every new unit drops will be excited to hear that yes, Xianyun and Hu-Ta are very good together. From my testing, you can vape Hu-Ta's plunges very consistently while doing N1C JP. What the fuck did I just— But yeah, N2C combo should only work with Jingcho as he applies more Hydro. Regardless, Hu-Ta and Xianyun Xianyun feel really good together, and I'm someone who owns a C1 Hu Tao, and it does net me faster clears than her regular teams, while also being better in AoE content due to plunge radius. The next potent plunge carry to mention is Bennett. C6 Bennett, Jingcho or Yalan, Furina and Xianyun is quite good. The strength of this compared to other plunge teams is since Bennett can take the burden of being the plunge carry, that opens up one more slot, and of course the best thing to slot in is another Hydra unit because they're so fucking OP. And Furina can probably use a more offensive weapon, further boosting the team's DPS. But like, who would actually want to unfield someone that looks this ungratefully atrocious? Give me back my YOLO plunge. Or give me my Lynette and Chloe Cussy, because Lynette and Xianyun teams are also like actually viable and not a meme. My Farazon is C3 and my Xianyun isn't on the new healing set. I should not be able to have decent clears with this at all. The last team I want to give spotlight to are Taser teams. The Crane Mom's double Onmo Taser teams have been the best at clearing the first half of this abyss for me, as EC swirls are broken in AoE, and Furina and Fish will cover your sustained damage. The problem with double Onmo teams before is that you either had nothing to do in downtime, or you couldn't run a defensive option without sacrificing a lot of sustained damage. And the best Onmo with off-field swirls was Sayu. Now Xianyun is here and you can spam Onmo plunges with her while Kaza's skill is on cooldown, for even more EC swirls. You should definitely try this team out. I've already established some of Seaman Retention's shortcomings, but I want to highlight some things I've heard to downplay her strength that I don't entirely think is fair. And I'm actually working on a video of Cloud Retainer misconceptions, like I did with Furina, so let me know what creators' takes I need to cook. The most annoying one I've heard is that she only works with 3 units, and if you're still saying this, you're either misinformed or stupid. Or you're looking at things with an extremely limited scope. I've already established at least 5 top tier teams where she's an upgrade to, and she works and makes any melee character a strong carry without ridiculously high investment. The next massive gripe is her buff being single target for some reason, and this one I don't really get all too much. With most of the carries she enables primarily looking at Diluc and Hu Tao, it's not like they had massive amounts of AoE in the first place outside of their burst. And now they have plunges which have the highest multipliers in their kits in a 360-degree radius. And as I predicted, the plunge buff targeting does seem to be random, so over your 8 plunges the damage is going to be close to evenly distributed. I guess I should talk about energy requirements, and I think this one is She has high energy requirements. Almost every support does. But she has access to a plethora of ER weapons, especially Fav, and you can also run an ER Suns on her for alleviation. It's not that deep. It's not even like her particle generation is random like Bennett. You always get 5 particles. That's about it for the most common downplays I've seen, so I'm going to highlight some of her pros that I found from playtesting her. I think the biggest one for me is that plunging is not only good damage, but it's amazing defensive utility. Enemies can't hit you when you're up in the air, and you have high poise when going up and going down. That sound. And there's also dash cancels on Claymore characters like Hula, where it's so hard to get hit or staggered it's unreal. Xianyun's mobility is also amazing. I don't know if I have a clip of it, but when you're fighting the Rune Serpent or Weenot, who are both on the second half, you can just delay your skills in the air and then Falcon dive the moment you see them pop out, which is great considering how much they move. And the funny thing is that for an Onmo healer, I haven't even touched on her healing, but on top of her survivability from being able to jump over attacks, her sustained healing and the fact that it's team-minded almost entirely offsets Furina's drain. And it feels great to be able to go through my second rotation and not fear for my life whenever I bring Furina out to recast her summons. To sum it up, Xianyun enables an extremely strong niche that makes multiple characters top tier, as well as pushing already strong characters further, also whilst being an amazing healer on Furina teams and making swirl setups on EC and Vape teams quite easy. If you have the units at your disposal like C6 Bennett and Furina, I think that Xianyun is quite broken as a unit for the amount of things she lets clear comfortably. And on that note, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe and comment your thoughts on Xianyun, as I'd love to hear and respond to almost every single comment. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.